I think the greater good is more physicians feeling comfortable and well versed in social media. I don't think they all have to have 500,000 followers, but I think if they're showing up for the right reasons and they're doing a good job and being real to themselves, it's going to help the landscape. Because right now, if you open up any of your apps and scroll, it's a scary place to be. Like, I think we do need more experts and more reasonable voices to drown out a lot of the misinformation and noise.
IVF doctors superstars, fertility physicians with digital media brands like niche celebrities. There are a couple dozen of them at most in the fertility space. Together, their followers number in the millions. And where for you and I, the appropriate word might be audience, they really do have followers. I have three of these superstars on the program. Dr. Aimee Eyvazzadeh, the Egg Whisperer, Dr. Roohi Jeelani, CEO of Onto Health, and Dr. Lucky Sekhon, partner at RMA New York. They all embody the same raw talent, but they leverage their public profiles for very different aims, remaining a self-pay practice, pursuing creative endeavors like authoring a book, and scaling a clinic group and tech-enabled OBGYN referral network. If you would like to accomplish any of those things, I don't think you can copy these people, but you might take a page out of their book. Dr. Eyvazzadeh, for one, has no time to waste. She has to choose her partners very carefully, and she talks about the specific cases where Juniper Genomics was able to help when others hadn't been able to help, and why she ended up switching to Juniper for her PG. And I bust Dr. Jeelani for sneaking in late. Now off you go to be a superstar.
If you like the information in this episode, we're compiling so much more data on new technology in IVF, products, services, market analyses, info on mergers and acquisitions, and data on every company in the fertility space. Go to data.insidereproductivehealth.com. If your company isn't an IVF Heroes Universe sponsor, your competitors are so much more visible to your customers because we report on your category and we give that info to your customers. Go to data.insidereproductivehealth.com to learn more about other fertility companies or submit your company today. Don't be left out.
Today's advertiser helped make the production and delivery of this episode possible for free to you. But the themes expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Inside Reproductive Health, nor of the advertiser. The advertiser does not have editorial control over the content of this episode, and the guest's appearance is not an endorsement of the advertiser.
Dr. Sekhon, Lucky, welcome to the Inside Reproductive Health podcast, and Dr. Eyvazzadeh, Aimee, welcome back yet again.
Thanks for having us. So excited to talk to you.
Same here. Thank you for having me. This is my first time.
So you have these doctors that have really large social media presences, but it isn't just for new patient generation. It serves an operational purpose. In Dr. Eyvazzadeh's case, Aimee, I think, is it self-pay patients? Is that still your core patient population? So you have this super wide funnel, but it serves a purpose of the people that you're serving are self-pay patients. So you've got a wide funnel to get to a patient, a number that can sustain your practice. And in Roohi's case, she was doing 1,600 retrievals a year, something like that. And her marketing presence was helping to sustain that operational system. For you, what does the social media presence that you have sustain or allow you to do operationally?
I would say it goes beyond operational. I think it is kind of the perfect antidote to clinician burnout. I think it's a creative outlet. And for sure, there's also a lot of gains in areas like I never have to worry about my schedule being empty. Like it's nice to have a brand. It's nice to have people know who you are and want to come see you because they've already kind of gotten a preview of your communication style. They understand, the basics of how you feel about some hot button items in our field. There's so much clinical controversy and so many differing opinions. And I think when people have the ability to kind of preview what you're about, they can understand even before walking through your clinic doors if they are aligned with your thinking and if you're the type of physician that they could see eye to eye with and feel comfortable. So I think that there's a benefit in that. I mean, I see a difference in body language when a patient walks in who knows me from Instagram versus someone who was referred by their OBGYN and they have no idea that I do anything online whatsoever. Because the veneer has already, you've already gotten rid of that barrier and their guard is down. They almost feel like they know you. And so I think the quality of the conversations tend to be better. People are feeling a little less apprehensive. Therefore, they're able to engage and learn and actually soak in the information. They're often coming to you pre educated, which means you can have a higher level conversation.
And Dr. Roohi Jeelani, how do you feel about that issue?
Wait, how do I feel about what?
Yeah, we have a podcast bomber, Dr. Roohi Jeelani, joining us, and we are thrilled that you're here, Roohi. I was putting you on the spot, like Ferris Bueller's teachers do, like my teachers did, and I did about as well as you did. Like, what's a specific example of a hot button issue that would normally get people caught up that you're able to move faster because they know your stance on it?
Maybe I described it incorrectly. It's not necessarily a hot button issue, but I think that there are polarizing topics within the clinical realm in our field, like day 3 versus day 5 transfers. Should women over 40 do PGT or not? And reproductive immunology, like that's its own thing, right? And so I think there are a lot of different ways that our field is practiced, and there are a varying degree of clinicians who are either, on one end of the spectrum or the other when it comes to venturing out and doing very experimental things. There are some people that are really hardline and evidence based. And so I think there is something and someone for every type of patient. And sometimes a patient who's already been on a journey for quite some time and she's, or they as a couple have been dealing with a certain clinic or a doctor, they might be wanting to think outside the box. And so I think by being able to preview what a doctor's major opinions are on some of these, I guess we could call them hot button issues, but clinical controversies or polarizing topics, I think it makes people feel more comfortable and confident because they kind of already know what they're getting into before they see that doctor.
Some people could either leverage that confidence that the patient has in you to extend to the rest of your team, or you could do everything yourself like Aimee Eyvazzadeh. I mean, are you still doing just about everything? Are you doing ultrasounds? Do you have any PAs or NPs that work for you?
No, I mean, I have a big team, but I still do all my own scans, all my own retrievals, all my own transfers, make my own calendars, review trigger shot instructions with every single patient, review every single embryology report. And I give reports day 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So I still do all of that myself.
I want to dive into this a little bit because this might be where the three of you diverge a little bit, in that having a strong brand and a really deep media presence can allow you to maybe use that leveraging to other people, or it can sort of entrench you and stuff. And I know that just from having a podcast and just by having my name as on the email that sends the articles out, even though I'm not in the byline or anything like that, it does sort of entrench me into everything that we do for client services. Whenever the audience has a correction, it's like they're going to me directly. And Aimee has just sort of embraced that. I don't want to speak for you, Aimee, but you've just sort of embraced that. That's sort of who you are. You're kind of built that, well, I'm just doing everything. And is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I don't wish that anyone is like me. I mean, I don't enjoy vacation. I really don't. Like, I promise my family 1 week a year, I will leave the office. And during that time, I am allowed to work from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. because it's on Hawaii time. And it's a blessing and a curse. And I think it's just, it's a genetic defect I have. And my family knows that about me and they accept me as I am. And they know what makes me happy. So no one needs to be like me. There's nothing about this and how I run a practice, answering 800 emails a day, sleeping 4 hours a night, running cycles 7 days a week, and loving every minute of it. It's just not something that I think people should try and emulate. I don't want anyone to think that this is the goal. This is not the goal. But it was just important for me to just accept who I am. And I can't change that about myself.
And some people should know thyself and be free, and other people need to know themselves and be stressed.
Yeah. There's nothing about it that stresses me. Not at all.
I wonder where you're at now, Roohi, because you were sort of in that camp. You were doing a lot, and now you are the CEO of a new venture where you are trying to scale more. And so, how now talk to us about how maybe your brand is still entrenching you into things that you'd rather leverage to other people, or are you successfully leveraging that and using yourself as a brand to extend to the rest of the company?
Yeah. I would say I'm using myself as a brand to extend to the rest of the company. I'm very much like Aimee. I'm very obsessive over everything. It's a fault and a blessing. It allows me to be engulfed. But I also think the minute you eliminate yourself from being a practicing provider, or very similar to what Lucky was saying, like you don't get to see what your patients are wanting, desiring, trending. So I like being involved in the day to day very much. I think adding in that CEO scaling bucket and learning a new skill set is something that I took on, and I'm loving it. It's very exciting, things that I've never done before.
But in order to take on that bucket, where you have to let some things go, or by let things go, I simply mean have other people do them. Are you still doing all of your own scans, or do you intend to?
I don't do my own scans, but I do all my own reviews. I do all my FERTs. I do all my day sevens. I do all my pregnancies. I do in Denver my retrievals and transfers. In Chicago, we've never been like that. Like we do doctor of the day. I'm still in a market where I'm still doing doctor of the day. So very similar, but remember, I did this before with my other practice. I covered 7 states. I scaled. So the scaling part and the growing part is not the hard thing. I would say the hard thing is now having that CEO bucket. But the hardest thing for me, if you said, Griffin, as a friend, like, what's the hardest for you? Having time to have creative, uninterrupted thought to be like, what is it that I need to do next? And what is the next that comes in fertility? Because this is engulfing. Like I'm sure, like Aimee can tell you, there's not a single minute. There's never a time on my phone that my email's not below 800, that my text messages aren't below 50. They're constantly coming in. So I would say the hardest thing for me is when I'm trying to learn from other CEOs and other business leaders, they always talk about having this uninterrupted. And I'm sure you could tell me running a company, like, how do you get that time where you're just mindful of creative thought and the next? And that is a place I would want to get to.
Lucky, is there any hope for REIs to be more compartmentalized?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think I am finding my balance like everyone else. I'm definitely someone that logs in 7 days a week and I always review my own patients' results, but I feel like I've gotten it down to a science where I know, the 30 minutes in the day where everything is back and people on my team know not to make calls if a different doctor reviewed. So I've been able to feel like I'm really hands-on and be hands-on in patient care without necessarily doing every single step. And I think being in a large volume practice with a lot of different physicians, we have at least 20 plus physicians, it helps a lot because, I'm not on call that many weekends out of the year. So I feel like I've been able to find balance because of a large team and having a lot of uniformity in how we practice. And so it's kind of like you learn to telepathically communicate even just by reviewing someone else's results. So there's a lot of cross coverage and a team approach, but everyone owns their own patient. And everyone at the end of the day is responsible for reviewing, and you work within these silos. So I have a very small connected team of nurses, coordinators, and that works for me. I mean, I would say I have a high volume, but what brings me fulfillment personally as a clinician and just as a human being isn't to scale. I feel like I get to a certain capacity and that's what I can do. Because for me, I need to make sure I don't get compassion fatigue. I need to make sure that I feel like I really know my patients. And I also, on a selfish personal level, I find it really fulfilling to pursue creative projects outside of patient care. I wrote a book. I mean, that wouldn't have been possible if I was, just 100% thrown into patient care like 7 days a week. I feel like I do need to carve out time to do things that are also benefiting patients and benefiting people beyond the four walls of my clinic.
So there's about 20 docs at RMA New York.
Yes.
Is the bell curve pretty wide in terms of volumes of patients that each doctor is seeing and how many IVF cycles they're doing?
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between newer associates who are ramping and, they're still maturing their network in terms of the OBGYNs that are referring to them. And then there's people who maybe don't have to work so hard to network because they already have an established brand or they already have a really strong referral network. New York City's huge, but it's also a really small, tight-knit community when you think about women's health. So, I think there's a lot of different types of physicians in my practice. I'm probably the most active on social media in the media in general, but there are other doctors that create content and are on the local news channels and are putting themselves out there. And then there's people that really the bread and butter of who's showing up at their door to see them as a doctor is coming from OBGYN referrals.
If I can ask, generally speaking, where do you fall on that bell curve?
It's kind of it's hard to say because I don't think we do a great job of tracking exactly where a patient comes from, and sometimes there's a lot of overlap because I always ask patients.
I just mean in terms of like volumes. Like, are you kind of middle of the pack, or
I would say I'm like near the center of the bell curve, but there's also other clinicians that are high volume and very busy, and they're not doing what I'm doing. It's just a different mechanism, and it's because they've been in practice for a long time and they have a great network.
Aimee, do you have partners that you work with that you can at least unleash some things on? People, vendors, or other. I think we were talking about Juniper Genomics before we started this conversation. Are there people that you rely on to at least take over some domain, or that you can trust all but implicitly, or that you work very closely with?
They take care of genetic counseling, pre-test genetic counseling, and they do a better job of that than I do. My dream was to have a genetic testing platform always that didn't just tell us about chromosomes, but also could look at the genes related to implantation. Because I think one of the hardest things as a fertility doctor is to go through failed transfers and just not have an understanding as to why. And even after I did all the tests for a lot of these patients, ruled out endometritis, endometriosis, you know, maybe thought outside the box and did, reproductive immunology testing and found not a single thing wrong. The answer, I think, a lot of the time is actually in their embryos and in the DNA. So I had a patient who had something like 8 AA embryos. She was young, and I did 4 transfers and not a single one of them worked. And then I read something about Juniper and I was like, wow, this company could actually give me answers that I need to help this patient. So we actually walked away from her embryos. We ran her through a whole nother cycle. Again, gorgeous embryos. 75% of them had a gene. Can't remember what it was off the top of my head right now. Both her and her husband actually carried it. And it wasn't something that you would have picked up in a carrier screen. That would make these embryos basically unusable. And so next transfer, we picked the embryo that didn't have it. She got pregnant and, changed the course of her IVF journey because it would have taken many transfers to get to that one AA that was on the list. It was probably like number 3. So I would have probably had to do 2 more transfers because they were all AAs. I probably would have just started at the top. And so I think this platform gives patients more information about their embryos by looking at these genes and not just the chromosomes. So it's more impactful. And so I've moved completely to Juniper for my PGTA because they allow an opt-in option. So it's not like you have to, pay for, let's say, their PGTG option. You can always start with PGTA and then opt in later for the G. And so that's something that's been really helpful. So that's just something that I've been doing lately.
This is what I'm talking about of though you have to vet that part. It's not like there's a procurement department of a larger network that says, here's the PGT lab that we're using, or the carrier screening lab, or the EMR that we're using. You have to vet every single potential partner, and it ultimately comes down to your time, no?
Yeah, but it's worth it because if a patient's getting pregnant, that's less time I have to spend on failed transfers. It's a lot of time that's invested in a cycle that doesn't work, in a transfer, and running a frozen embryo transfer protocol, showing up for that transfer. So having a tool that will potentially decrease the number of transfers to help a patient get pregnant is incredible. So I don't just use Juniper. I mean, obviously there are other genetic testing platforms out there. I give patients options and choice. And that's the thing that I can do because I own my own lab and can offer patients a number of different companies. And I know that some centers don't have that flexibility just because of the patient volume. It's just easier for them to be like, there's one option and that's it. And I can understand that. But the good thing about me being able to decide, so that's one good thing about the fact that I have my own lab. I can now give patients different options rather than just one.
Rui, we've been talking about different destinations for having a large media presence or marketing pipeline. It doesn't have to be scale, but we do need to scale somewhere around here. We're, as a field, we're treating maybe 5% of the patients that could be treated. Tell us about the new venture that you're CEO of, Onto Health. What's the vision for scale?
Yeah. So onto health, one of the biggest things, just going back to being a fertility patient, one of the things I did, even though I knew I had PCOS, PMOS now, is my reluctance to see a fertility doctor. Like I was told at a very young age, you're going to need intervention and it's going to be through ovulation induction with your OB. So that was ingrained in my head. And I would constantly go to my OB. And of course, I was in residency. These were my friends and my attendings. I'd be like, let's try this, let's try that. And I was under the table trying to guide them. And I'm not the only one, right? Like that's what most of our patients do. Like if they don't, most of the patients that, and I know Lucky and Aimee can speak to this, that find you through other media platforms like podcasts and even my Instagram or LinkedIn, those are your sophisticated failed cycles, second, third, fourth opinions. Very rarely do you encounter, I'm just starting to conceive patient and I'm coming to you because of your social media. Most of the patients that I get, like, here's the patient that's trying to conceive needs fertility care is direct through OB referral or a friend of a friend. But there's really rarely any testing done there. So I think with Onto, what I'm trying to do is a earlier patient acquisition, earlier patient education, and that's through automation, tech platforms, and also playing the wellness angle. I do a lot of or intervention through health and wellness. I know I needed that. I kept miscarrying. It was Aimee, what Aimee was saying earlier, like my son was my 9th transfer. I started care when I was 27, didn't have him till I was 31, which is pretty unfortunate because there was a lot of trial, error, failed cycles, a lot of money I didn't have, and living in a very conservative, non-covered state. So I think through Onto Health, what I'm trying to do is get to OBs to educate them earlier, to educate our patient earlier. And then by early intervention, improving our outcomes, fewer cycles is the ultimate goal.
What does getting to OBs mean? Does it mean enrolling them in some kind of referral network? Does it mean employing them?
No, neither one. It means getting them the tools that they need to spend time. So I think there's an article recently that was published saying that our OB-GYNs don't have that time to spend with the fertility patients.
Are you talking about Brian Levine's article in the Free Press?
Yeah.
Which the title, I don't know if Dr. Levine chose the title. Oftentimes editors will choose a title and the person doesn't have any say in it. But I think it was OBGYNs aren't doing their job and here's why, which is a compelling headline. But please go on.
So at Onto, we're hoping to solve for that through tech and automation. We're deploying a education platform that's going to be eventually AI. Right now, it's through automation where they're going to be able to hand their patients QR codes. That's going to do an intake based on the questions that they answer. It's going to deploy testing through a local lab corp, which is going to then explain the results to the patient through education modules and then get those results back to their OB. And then internally, we're going to teach the OBs how to interpret the results and then when to send them to an REI.
But you felt that this tech and your practice model had to be like one, as opposed to having a practice that, because there are tech solutions out there that say that they're tackling that problem, but you seem to think like it has to be like in the practice, not just a tool that they're using.
Correct. Because if you give somebody a tool and don't teach them how to use the tool, it's very much like AI, right? Like, and Claude, ChatGPT, they're wonderful tools, but they're very operation driven, whoever the operator is. So if the operator doesn't prompt it right, then it's useless. So if you have a tool, but the person deploying the tool or integrating the tool is no longer there, then it doesn't serve a purpose. There's plenty of early intervention, early access, do your testing. But without the proper integration, without the proper follow up, it means nothing.
Lucky, you mentioned that sometimes you take some time to pursue other creative things, like within the space of reproductive health. You wrote a book. Do you take some of that time to think about how you're going to adapt your practice, or is it for a particular creative venture?
I think it really depends on what we're talking about. I think for the book, some of these things, they're not necessarily opportunities that you're going to always have full control over. But I think that you have to be ready for your opportunity when it comes. And so I had a perfect sequence of events come together where I found a great team that, was my book agent, my editor, and these all happened to be people going through an infertility journey. Not necessarily my patient, but, my editor is someone that came to our first meeting with a notebook filled with notes from all of my Instagram lives, like 2 years prior when she was going through IVF. And it just felt like this is the perfect team. We are speaking each other's language. We're on the same page. They know what I'm all about, and they are at a place where they want to prioritize this project. And it's my version, I guess, of scaling because I can't see all the patients and I can't, do all the things myself, but I can help with the massive fertility knowledge gap in writing a book. I can continue to create content. I can go on national television. And so that's kind of my creative outlet and a way that I feel like I'm not really taking time away from patient care and education. It's just approaching the problem from a different angle. And I always believe in taking a multifaceted approach. And I think from each of those experiences, there are other opportunities that spring up. And so I can't say that I've ever been someone with a master plan. I certainly never anticipated writing a book, but it's kind of like just showing up and feeling your way through it. And it's been a very intuitive journey for me. So I don't know what my next step will be, but I think the pillars of what I try to focus on are providing education and support. And I think a huge piece that's been lacking in our field for too long is mental health support. And you see it and hear about it all the time. I mean, when Jennifer Aniston came out within the past year saying she went through failed cycles and she suffered in silence. I mean, I've never seen so much engagement on anything that I've ever posted about. And there's a reason, because I think that there's a huge deficit in the mental health support that's provided to people after failed cycles or after they've moved on from IVF.
If your educational focus has niched a bit more than it was 5 years ago, Rue, I wouldn't say you have a niche, but PCOS is something you've covered quite a lot about. Dr. Sheen has covered a lot about RPL. I was going to ask you, Lucky, if you have started to maybe, obviously not to the exclusion of everything else, but spending more time on a particular niche. Have you, and is mental health if so?
I think it's one aspect just because within our clinic, we've always integrated a clinical psychologist, we've had social workers. We've worked really closely with the company Conceive, and they've provided mental health support to a lot of our patients. So I think it's something that we prioritize as a practice, and I've seen it help my patients. We know that, psychological burnout is one of the major contributors to prematurely dropping out of treatment. And for a lot of patients, I don't love that it's this way, but for some people, it does take 7 transfers to get there. But if they are psychologically and mentally burnt out, they're never going to realize that success, right? So I wouldn't say it's a niche. I think I recognize it as low hanging fruit of an area where we need more help as a field to provide better support. But there's, I think, a lot of areas that need to be tackled. I mean, there's a major online misinformation issue and predatory marketing. And I think I tend to skew towards doing a lot of content around IVF, which I'm seeing that might be detrimental to my brand because people might see my page and think, oh, you only deal with IVF, when in reality, I help people, understand their fertility. I help people with ovulation induction. But I think IVF is just such a big black hole for so many people. And there's so many misconceptions and myths around it and fear and a lot of misinformation targeting it now because of the political environment that I tend to skew towards talking about it a lot more, even though that might not represent what I'm doing as a clinician.
Aimee, you don't stop working, but do you ever use some of that work time for dedicated periods for clarity and vision, focusing not on the immediate case or patient workload that has to be done, but rather the future value of your practice?
I mean, I'm always thinking about the future and how things are changing. I mean, I did an interview for The Cut from New York Magazine yesterday, and they were interviewing me about like helping women over 45 getting pregnant. And I said to her, in the last week, I've seen more new patients over 45 trying to get pregnant with their own eggs than in the first 10 years of my practice. So, like, as clinicians, we see these trends, and that's not going to change. I'm not going to say that. She kind of questioned me on the ethics of that. And I said, well, the thing is that, like, this is what's happening. Women are asking these questions. So I think it's important to show them respect. And so, like, I can see trends before other people, do, let's say in the media and stuff like that. So then, I talk about that kind of stuff. So I don't necessarily need like alone time to think about these things. But when I have a thought, I have an idea, I have a way of like logging it and then getting back to it and just riffing on it in my own head so that I can talk about it potentially in the future if there's an interview that comes up or I want to record a podcast segment with somebody.
So it comes into the stream of consciousness, you park it somewhere, and if it's important enough, then you fit it somewhere into the schedule. Is that what you're doing right now, Rui? It sounded like you want to get to a place where you're designating time for vision breaks.
Yeah, I think I do that right now, but I get really bad anxiety. And Aimee can maybe coach me on this. Like, how am I going to get to it? When am I going to get to it? Like, I want everything. Griffin, outside of this, you know me as a friend, like, I want it now, right? Like, I have zero patience. So if I think of an idea, I want to implement it like yesterday. And I think that's where Aimee needs to learn from me. Like, how do you park it, walk away from it? Because I will have sleepless nights until I do it.
So parking it doesn't give you peace of mind to get to. Are you using a to-do list or a calendar?
I have like a crazy note section on my phone where like I'll write stuff down, and then I don't know how Aimee does it, but I'll like elaborate on it. I have an amazing team that I've worked for the past 12 years that has been with me, kind of like my thought leaders. They bounce ideas off of, they help me with the execution. But there's some stuff that's like bigger than all of us, right? Like being able to, I don't know, what's one of them? Like I recently had this slew of Asherman patients, and there was a study that Aimee was kind enough to share with me with hyperbaric oxygen and Ashermans and protocols that have been working. I've been sending it out, and somebody now saw this as a great opportunity to capitalize on it. So now they're calling in all these fertility patients for hyperbaric oxygen. And this is where I think that's the line that Lucky's talking about. How do you take this treatment, which you've had success? Like I've had this OB patient of mine who I tried this on, knock on wood, she's like 20 weeks pregnant at work. Two of them, actually, they're both partners. And now that this other company is like trying to market and publicize and it's fertility, but doing it wrong. So I'm like, okay, my thought is, how do I stop this? How do I incorporate it, integrate it, get more information out there? But I can't park it because I want to do it now, because if done wrong, it can be harmful. Right. But done right, it's very beautiful. Like to be able to get successfully these OB-GYNs in our field pregnant after multiple transfers is amazing.
Lucky, what idea is gnawing at you right now?
I have an insane notes app. I always tell my husband, like, if anything should ever happen to me, don't let anyone go through my notes app, because I have like, some of it's nonsensical. I mean, I go back to an idea I jotted down when I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, I don't even understand what this was. So I write down everything. And then I can't say I have a process. Someone yesterday asked me about my content calendar, and they were like, how does the end of July sound? I was like, I don't like ration out my content. If I have the idea and I feel compelled, I'm going to post it. I'll post it at like midnight. I know that's terrible for engagement. I don't really care, because I know at 7 a.m. I'm going to be busy monitoring my patients and I may never remember to do it again. So my style is a little bit chaotic, and it's again very just intuitive and like feeling my way through. I also think you can't always plan things. Some of the things that resonate the most are just happening in the moment. It's like a social media moment. It's something a Kardashian said. It's like, just capitalizing on those viral moments where you can fool people into being entertained and getting educated without even realizing they're getting that education. But I definitely have themes, and I think a lot of it's driven by patient care. Like I get asked a lot of the same questions in 1 week. Like Roohi said, you're like, oh, this is a trend. There's a cluster of people that are asking me these questions. There must be some TikTok or something that they're seeing. And so I often will get novel ideas of questions that I've never answered in a post from something my patient asked me that day, which is cool.
Aimee, do you have an idea gnawing you, or does it just get done as soon as it flies into your stream of consciousness?
I mean, like right now, I had a patient who had like 5 to 7 hysteroscopies for Asherman's. And I saw this Instagram ad for this wand, a red light wand. And so I told her to use it. Next transfer worked, no fluid in her lining. Her lining got to 7 millimeters, the thickest she's ever had it. So what I did was like I started collecting, like created a folder, the fringe wand. And then now I have like 5 patients pregnant. I have a patient actually yesterday, I told her she was pregnant. Her lining was 11 millimeters. And she's like, Aimee, I've never gotten my lining over 5. And I was like, well, can we just check a pregnancy test today? She came to me for her new patient ultrasound. I had already seen her on a video call. I got to tell her that she was pregnant yesterday. So it's like that kind of stuff. I'm like, cool. Now I need to like write a case series, and I have pre-med students that work for me. They're like my employees. So a lot of medical assistants, a lot of my medical assistants, probably about 30% of them go on to medical school. So they take their gap year with me. And so they help me write this stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that like excites me, that I can get this information out there, then other people could benefit from it. So we're going to write up a case series about this, but that's how I kind of do things. So just help one patient with something that I have an idea about. It works. Help another patient, maybe get 5. And then you see that there's a trend, and then you write a case series, and hopefully it'll help other people.
I'm not going to ask each of you if this can be taught, because my conclusion is that this proclivity to content generation, personal branding cannot be taught at the level that the three of you are executing on. And I'm giving a talk at a ASRM pre-congress this year on marketing, and that's in the talk. Like people can't just replicate your playbook if they're not that player. And it seems to me like there's only a handful of you, like the three of you, Dr. Shaheen, Dr. Crawford, Dr. Chen, a handful of others. But the common theme among the three of you, even though you use this brand generation for different things, is that it is just part of your everyday thinking and operations at all times. So rather than ask you if it can be taught, I'm going to ask you if any of the three of you can convince me that I'm wrong, that it cannot be taught.
I mean, I can convince you. I don't know, Lucky. I think it can be taught. I think if someone wants to do it, you have to see what you're comfortable with. Like, I can't, like, I love what Roohi and Lucky do. I can't do that. I can't talk alone. Like, I can't make the content that they make. I know what I can do. And I do really well, like, talking to someone and having conversations. And that's comfortable for me. And writing blog posts that like written form, that's comfortable for me. So I can't be someone that I'm not. So I think someone just has to see like what they're comfortable with and how they want to present the information that's important to them, and do that. And just don't try and be someone you're not. Like I can see sometimes when someone looks like they're a hostage, like they're like someone has and you're like, that is so uncomfortable for them. Please make them stop. Like you can tell that the clinic is making them do these posts where they're just saying things and you're like, oh my God, it can't be taught. But the thing is, they just need to do what's comfortable for them and just do that, and do that really well.
I think that's great advice. I feel like you have to show up in a way that's authentic to you. And by the way, you don't have to be pigeonholed into one way or the other. The stuff that I do today and how I present myself today is certainly very different than what I was maybe doing 3 years ago. I feel like it's such a muscle that you flex and you get stronger, just like going to the gym. Like you can change your body. You can show up and you can practice and you can keep trying to create and perfect. But the key is, as Aimee said, you have to want it. There's been so many smart doctors that I work with and that I know, and I'm like, oh my God, you have a great personality. Like, you should totally do this. But they have to want to do it and have to care, because it is a huge commitment. And it's like an organism. It's like, you have to water the plant, you have to feed your pet. Like, you have to keep feeding it. Otherwise, it's not going to grow. And so I do see a fair number of people start trying, but they kind of give up and they're not consistent. At the end of the day, that might be the right thing for them, because maybe they just truly don't derive pleasure from this and it's not enjoyable and it's not who they are. But I think there's something for everyone. I've seen all sorts of doctors show up on social media, not even in fertility, like menopause, all these other areas. And some of them are like straight laced academics, like you wouldn't envision that they would have a social media platform, but they're showing up in a way that's authentic and it's resonating.
But do they have 500,000 followers or do they have 100 followers?
I mean, some of them have bigger followings, and they're also the people, giving a plenary talk, like in other fields. I can't think of an example within fertility per se, but I have seen even, older clinicians, like different generations, getting into social media. Maybe they're not doing a TikTok dance or they're not doing a funny voiceover and using audio, but they're showing up in a way that's authentic. And I think that's what resonates with people. And you're going to be successful no matter what if you just are yourself and show up as who you are and do the things that you actually care about and feel passionate about.
I guess where we're maybe seeing different terms is what the definition of success is. Because to return to your analogy of fitness, that yes, you can be taught to eat right and follow an exercise regimen, but you cannot be Mr. or Miss Universe if you don't have the genes.
And I think that's okay, though. I think the greater good is more physicians feeling comfortable and well versed in social media. I don't think they all have to have 500,000 followers, but I think if they're showing up and they're showing up for the right reasons and they're doing a good job and being real to themselves, it's going to help the landscape. Because right now, if you open up any of your apps and scroll, it's a scary place to be. Like, I think we do need more experts and more reasonable voices to drown out a lot of the misinformation and noise.
And I think it depends, Griffin, like what the purpose of them being on is. If they're getting on there to get a following, right? It's harder to build a following now. It was much easier 10 years ago. But if they're getting on there to build presence and just be like, I'm a doctor, I'm on social media if you have any questions, to validate and, like Lucky said, drown out others who may be posting information without the expertise. Like we all did that social media summit with Serena when she launched it. I think not everyone will have that following, but I think having a presence there is important for sure.
How is AI going to amplify or drown out what each of you three have been doing on social media?
I think that creativity and originality is going to win out. I don't know how it affects us specifically, but I think it's easier to generate content now. Whereas before the barrier was, having to write the caption and having to come up with the idea. And now you can outsource that. Like a lot of creators may be creating, more, but is it high quality? I think, as Roohi said, it depends on if you know how to use AI and leverage it in a way where you're still you. You're just able to scale what you were authentically doing yourself. But I think there's a lot of AI slop.
There's a ton of AI slop and it's only getting better. And the only reason I know that it's AI is because I know that it's AI. But just pretend that you took that same video back to us 10 years ago when we didn't know that AI was capable of that. We would have thought that that was real people talking. And it's pretty close. And so I'm worried about all of you having to compete against that. We just make AI doctors that we think are real doctors saying made up literature or whatever it is that they're programmed to say or trained to say, and that you're then having to previously you're competing with the noise of other human beings rising to having an organic reach. But now when you have an AI system that is trained to just it knows how to get as much likes and clicks as possible, that now you're competing against that.
I think I worry more about people using my likeness to try to sell their products because that has happened to a fair number of physician creators. And I don't know what the solution to that is other than trying to report it. But that scares me a lot. As a creator, that scares me.
Has that happened to you, Rui? That an AI avatar has posed as you saying something or selling something?
Not selling something, but I've had a lot of big profiles. But for AI marketing, what I was saying is there's companies now kind of countering that. So if it's an AI driven content, it's not getting as much SEO optimization, whether that's on Google. I don't know if it's necessarily on social, it's on TikTok, but there's algorithms detecting AI.
Are you using it to amplify your message more, like having it help you make videos or images or anything like that?
I'm not. I look pretty horrible like I am every day. Like I try to be very transparent and candid because I think I started my social media very authentic. I try to stay very authentic. Like it's a mix of me, my family, my kids, me and PJs, me and work, and like all my highs and all my lows. And you don't need AI when you're not trying to curate it. It's not curated. I think you need it more when you're trying to curate something. So I think from a company standpoint, the reason I know that is because I have a marketing agency that I work with, and they're very particular in content that's created through AI versus a content writer or copywriter, because when you're trying to amplify those messages, there's software that can detect AI generated blogs, for example.
Like, are you using AI to amplify in any way? Like, are you using it to create videos or photos?
No, not to create videos. I'm verbose and I like to pack as much information into my captions as possible. And every once in a while, I like type up this beautiful caption. I write all my own captions, but it'll be just over the limit. And I want to keep all the information in it. So I might say, like, find a way to like shorten or abbreviate things, like just something that's like time consuming. So it allows me to just like focus on the creative aspect and then fit those parameters and just get it up and posted. That's how I might use it.
And do you use PAs and NPs? Do you have APPs working under you?
Not seeing patients for me. No, I see patients. I see my own patients, but I have a team of 2 nurses, 2 fertility care coordinators who help manage setting up the logistics of the IVF cycles, and finance coordinators. And yeah, I mean, I have also a lot of support. I was thinking about this when you were asking Aimee about PGT platforms and how we make those decisions. I mean, I'm at RMA of New York. I'm part of the USF network. So we leverage a lot of the learnings of the programs collectively. And I think, we have genetic counselors on staff. So I think genetics is one of the fastest growing areas in our field and one of the big challenges, because you always have bigger and better platforms and panels. And so we rely on the experts, and we have 2 really amazing genetic counselors. So I do feel spoiled in that I'm in a program with very strong infrastructure and resources. So that also allows me to see a high volume of patients and be very busy clinically. And even though I'm a partner in the practice, there's so many hands on deck that I don't have to get bogged down with all the operational details. I can just be who I am, see my patients, make my content. And for me, that's personally very fulfilling.
Do you include them in your content? Like your nurses, genetic counselors, are they in your Instagram posts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, there's some people that don't want to, but for the ones that are game, yeah, I think it's always more fun and engaging for sure.
What about you, Rui? You're trying to scale your personal brand to the company. So do you have more people from the company as guest stars in your personal social?
I do. I think it's not, we built the company together. Like all of us started, they're all over my social company. They've always been though. So it's a lot of my previous team. We built my first clinic all together, sold it, built and scaled the middle clinic together, and now scaling on to together. So we have a lot of history. And yeah. And like Lucky said, sometimes they want to be on, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I force them to be on.
That's always awkward, right? When you're like, do you want to be in my video?
I don't give them a choice. I'm like, here. And they're like, real.
You're all powerhouses, all 3 of you, and it's been a pleasure to have you on today. And while I don't think that people can replicate you, I think that they can take a page out of your book. I hope they do, and I hope to follow that book more closely and have you all back on. Thanks for coming on.
Go to data.insidereproductivehealth.com. That's where we're compiling so much data on new technology in IVF, products and services, market analyses, info and mergers and acquisitions, every data point that we can on the field writ large and the companies in the fertility field, we're compiling there. Go to data.insidereproductivehealth.com as we build that over time. And if your company isn't an IVF Heroes Universe sponsorship, your competitors are getting more visibility because we report on your category and we give that to your customers. We do that multiple times per year, and we do it around big events like ASRM and ESHRE. Go to data.insidereproductivehealth.com and submit your company today. Don't be left out.
Today's advertiser helped make the production and delivery of this episode possible for free to you. But the themes expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Inside Reproductive Health, nor of the advertiser. The advertiser does not have editorial control over the content of this episode, and the guest's appearance is not an endorsement of the advertiser. Thank you for listening to Inside Reproductive Health.